Welcome to Muse Talks. I'm your co-host Mabruk Alam.
And I'm your co-host, Sienna Sossi. Right before Thanksgiving break, Mabruk and I had the massive opportunity to attend the National Scholastic Press Association convention in Nashville, Tennessee.
We, along with thousands of other students, were able to connect, share, and surround ourselves with our passion, student journalism.
We also got to meet some incredible guest speakers, such as our two very special guests today on this episode.
First, we have Becca Andrews, a journalism professor at Western Kentucky University and author of No Choice, The Destruction of Roe v. Wade and the Fight to Protect a Fundamental American Right.
We also have with us John Archibald, a journalist with 35 years of experience under his belt, as well as 2 Pulitzer Prizes for commentary and local reporting.
Together, they co-host American Shrapnel, a podcast that looks into the radicalization of serial bomber Eric Rudolph, who laid bombs at the 1996 Olympics in Atlanta.
If you come from part 1 of this series, you know that we talked intensively about the state of journalism through the eyes of 2 veterans in the game.
If you haven't listened to part 1 yet, we highly recommend you do. However, in this episode, we talked to Andrews and Archibald about American Shrapnel and what it means to them.
This is Muse Talks American Shrapnel.
Well, too, I gotta ask, the session we sat in was about your podcast, about the American Shrapnel, which was an incident that happened, I think, 30 years ago. So if you could just tell us more about that, about how you covered in the podcast, why, and the importance today, I'd love to hear.
Yeah, so American Shrapnel is really the story of how Eric Rudolph was radicalized into this man who bombed the Olympics, who bombed a couple of abortion clinics and a lesbian bar. We felt like, even though this is something that happened a really long time ago, in some ways it's more relevant than ever because we're seeing so many young men and women who are getting radicalized online. And while it didn't happen online for Rudolph because it was the 90s, the whole
Yeah, I just want to say it wasn't like the Roman Empire. I mean, it was the freaking 90s, okay? That was it's not
I mean,
that
the
long.
internet existed in the 90s. It was there, but it was different, Archibald. You know it was different.
I know, I was just expressing my chagrin at being old as dirt.
Insert Matchbox 20 reference here. Yeah, so we set about to tell this story in narrative podcast form. Archibald covered this in Alabama in real time when it all happened. And then my background was in anti-abortion extremism and right-wing extremism. So we spent a really long time interviewing anyone who would talk to us and digging through old FBI files that no one had seen before. And somehow 3 years later, there was a podcast.
Speaking on your past as journalists, you guys both covered a lot of topics that had to do with Eric Rudolph's story. So how did that background impact the way you formulated the podcast?
Um, for me, it was coming to all the reporting kind of made me understand how little I knew at the time and on the ground. And Becca can probably tell you a good story about that.
Oh no, you tell it so much better. Actually, you know what? Let me tell the beginning of it and then you jump in. All right. So we've decided to do this podcast together. We've been kind of brought together by Hammondtree, our producer, who is incredible. And there's this lore, right? Of Archibald on the ground covering the aftermath of the bombing. They got the license plate number of the truck that was speeding away from Birmingham, and Archibald's editor Randy Henderson was go, figure it out, find him. And so this man gets in his car with his Matchbox 20 CD.
It was 1998, all right.
He drives out to the Nantahala Mountains and he pulls up in front of Eric Rudolph's trailer before the feds. What happened next, Archibald?
4-hour drive or whatever. And I get there and I go to that little post office And they tell me, yeah, that guy Rudolph lives down that street. And I go there and I knock on the door. And well, first of all, I count down from 10 because I was, that's what I always did when I was nervous before calling somebody. And when I get to one, you knock on the door, and he didn't come out. He didn't come out. So I was like, man, I was on the Eric Rudolph's porch before the FBI. That's kind of cool. And over the last 30 years, like she said, that's what I would say. That's what it was. I was on his porch before the FBI. So then we're
It's like
talking
I'm
to,
reporting this podcast out with John Archibald, who was there on the porch before the police got there.
For the
right,
FBI.
That's crazy.
before the FBI. And first of all, it's hard to imagine an era when the FBI would take 2 days to figure out where somebody lived, but it happened. And so we were sitting there with the head prosecutor who'd prosecuted the case and from Alabama, and he's showing us this secret stash of evidence that he had accumulated on his. Actually, I don't know if it was secret, but it was a stash of evidence on his computer. And he shows like the cameras going in when they busted into the house, and the stuff scattered around from his drawers that he had thrown down, and stuff still on the stove that he had just left. And I felt this cold feeling sweep through my bones and
His
exit
face
at the top of my
froze.
head. And I realized that I was at the wrong damn house. So instead of being a story about what a great reporter I was supposed to be, it was just the opposite.
And I'm a jerk, so I have really, really enjoyed this. Like I have milked it for all that it's worth.
I mean, how would you not? Like,
Just
I think this is the stuff of Sienna's dreams.
Yeah. But it ended up being really sort of an effective tool. In the podcast, it let us have that moment of levity, but it also sort of worked because 30 years, 25 to 30 years is a long time. And people forget things and they solidify things in memory that may or may not be true.
I think we very much felt that in the interviews that we did for American Shrapnel. Like, every interview we did, we felt so fortunate that people trusted us with this, particularly people who were victims in all of this. I don't think either of us will ever take that for granted.
It's sort of interesting because Becca and I have very, very different methods. And she is very prepared always. I mean, I'm sure before, the talk Saturday, I'm sure she worked for 8 hours on, PowerPoints and figuring out what she's going to say. And for interviews, she's going to sit down and put together read everything you've ever written, all of these things. And I'm more like, I'm going to show up and wing it. And, and so when we'd have these interviews, but my philosophy is that let people talk as long as they want and we'll figure out, so it's a really interesting combination of different techniques. And I think it worked. I think it was great because of that. I mean, if you work with somebody who's just like you, then you're just being redundant.
Yeah.
But if you work with somebody who thinks about things differently and prepares differently and who has, collaboration like that, I can't emphasize how great it is for the work, but it's also a great experience.
The downfall of my interview preparation methods is that I get really in the weeds and it's hard for me to be able to like zoom back. And I really loved that about the dynamic with Archibald because like I would have these like really like almost like too far down in the weeds questions and he would kind of know when to pull us back. And I think we got a lot of things that we never would have gotten otherwise if it had been just one or the other. So it worked out really well.
Well, from what I saw in your session, which was probably a very small snapshot of how you guys usually work, but you guys balance each other really well with how you answer questions, how you talk, how you present. So I'm happy that worked out well with you guys.
Well, we hope it did.
Yeah,
I
No,
mean, we didn't kill each other, so that was
we
good.
didn't. That's true. We only came close a few times.
Hey,
I
that's
wanted to
good.
kill him and our producer more than you.
Yeah,
So
I think he got the worst of it, honestly.
I have to ask because you mentioned this very slightly in the session, but I gotta know more. So you said the producer or maybe the organization they wanted to go a different way
A
than how you
documentary.
decided to go, the documentary. And I want to
Mm.
hear more about that. Like you guys decided to stick with your gut. Like I'm just curious.
Why podcast as the medium, I guess, is
Yeah,
that
an
question.
anti-documentary too.
Yeah, I mean, we're trying to do both.
Yeah,
We
we were.
started out to do the podcast because we have a podcast arm on our company. And then our company also was working with an outside organization developing and pitching it as a documentary, which we can show you. We could send you the trailer for that if you were interested,
Oh
and
God.
you'll see the difference because
No.
it came out and it was much more, Hollywood, much
Glamorizing.
more
Yeah.
car chases and Rambo kind of stuff, and that's not the story we wanted to tell. Mind you, if Netflix had written a big check and said that's what we want, we would have had to have some more discussion about
Yeah.
that. But we were clear from the start that we wanted to tell this story because we thought it was important for the moment we find ourselves. And the last thing, and Becca her head would have exploded if we had sort of if we'd done anything that sort of made this guy into some kind of folk hero.
Yeah.
Um, and that speaks highly of her, that
Yeah.
she would never stand for it. And not that I would, but I would not be the fireworks would not be quite as bright.
I think you're more like diplomatic with that stuff than I am. And
That
I
is
also think
unquestionably
like
true.
that is unquestionably true. And then and don't hate me for adding this in, but like there there always felt to me like a little bit of like a gender thing going on with this documentary production company because it was all men.
Oh, wow.
Um, there was
That's not
one,
true. The
there was one
woman who did all the
female
work was,
assistant who
yeah.
did all of the work.
Mm.
Fantastic. She was great. But like the whole like the creative team, like everyone at the top were men. And
Yeah.
when they talked to me, it often felt like, oh, we're talking to you as like,
Well, they talked to me about you while you were there.
yeah,
Yeah.
like like it
That's
was like I wasn't there. Or if I was there, like I was like an assistant. It's like, no, actually, like
you're the
I'm a
co-host.
co-creator.
Yeah.
Like
Yeah.
I'm here. And I mean that's a thing that like we dealt with throughout the project.
Yeah.
I mean Archibald and Hammond are not like that, thank God.
Yeah.
Like I wouldn't have worked with them if they were. But they were incredible. But it was a lot of men who were kind of looking at me like, oh, you're John Archibald's assistant, or like you're like
Yeah.
and and so I didn't really like that
Actually,
vibe.
they said that I was nice for
Your
being
mentor, my mentor,
a good mentor to
Oh.
you guys.
was just like,
I feel that because I get it as another woman in this space. I
Yeah.
completely understand. I went to a concert and it was like a big concert, and my friend was the photographer and he was a man. And just the way they talked to him versus how they talked to me, I had to take a step back. Like they were touching my arms and my waist, and with him, it was like a shake of a hand. And I was like, wow,
oh,
this is
absolutely
not.
not.
But
Yeah,
but
it
yeah, I mean,
doesn't
if you
get better, unfortunately. I don't think. I mean, in some spaces it does, I think. In some spaces, like people know not to act that way, but yeah, it was, it was definitely part of my experience of this project. And I don't know, I don't want to make a docu-series with people like that. I just
Wow.
don't.
I will say that also made the project much better.
Yeah.
I mean,
What
that
did
voice, that
the
realization.
blatant sexism made the project much better?
No, I mean, the fact that we were all aware of it
Yeah.
and conscious of what was happening, um, and the fact that if I'd have made it without you, I mean, I'm not saying I would be a sexist bastard, but I probably would have not looked at it in the same way that you made sure we looked at it.
I
Yeah.
mean,
And that's
same
why
though.
you've got to have people who are different
Hmm.
working together. I mean, that's why you got to have different, diversity of opinion and everything else.
Yeah, I think this product, I don't know, I feel weird talking about it. This podcast is so much better for like it having been the three of us instead of just one
Yeah.
of us.
Yeah, I mean,
I agree.
I think obviously sexism is a big issue throughout all industries and especially journalism where um I see it in our own newsroom sometimes, honestly.
Yeah.
Like I feel like you see it too. Like it's something that we need to change. Hopefully our generation is the one, if not the next,
Yeah.
to make that change and to really give women the respect they deserve in the field of journalism, especially.
Yeah, and I think you too, like admitting that you saw this, and then too, like you, John, like saying you saw it as well, really is like helpful and empowering to like people who listen to this and listen to your guys' story. Because like you guys worked around it and you created like this really important podcast that covered an issue the way you guys wanted it to be covered, especially in an age where a lot of the big TV shows are like Dahmer and Monster glorifying these criminals because it makes money.
They get TikTok edits made out of them.
Yeah.
And it's just really unfortunate to see like these people who hurt real people with other people with human heartbeats and human thoughts. And it's obviously every story is different with the serial murderers and the serial bombers. So you can't issue a blanket statement on all of them. But kind of speaking back to, Eric Rudolph and his radicalization, especially in today's age, like how does that story of American Shrapnel, how is it still relevant today, especially in the climate that we're in?
There's something that Archibald has written really well about, and this like was in the script a lot too. Like he talks about this rhetoric, kind of starting from like people's homes in isolation or in these like kind of hidden spaces. And now like it's made it into like state houses and the Capitol and the White House. Like we're seeing this become more and more um, politically acceptable in a mainstream way, which is really disturbing. And I think people don't understand that this was such a long time coming. And something that I think about a lot is if people had taken the radicalization of someone like Rudolph really seriously, instead of dismissing it as like, oh, this is a lone wolf, this is like one crazy person, which, we did for years, we did for decades. It's just like, oh, lone wolf, lone wolf. Instead of, oh, there's a systemic problem that we really need to address, then maybe we wouldn't be exactly where we are as a country.
Yeah.
And I think, there's been a lot of political violence lately, whether, the shootings in Minnesota, the Charlie Kirk, the attack in the governor's mansion in Pennsylvania. And it's just like it happens so much that we just get kind of numb to it. But at the same time, we're fighting over, we fight over all these culture war issues that don't really, that I mean, and I'm going to read this one section from Eric Rudolph's manifesto that he wrote after he was in prison. He said, this is written 20 years ago.
Yeah.
And he said, I knew that America needed a nationalist conservative revolution. Unlike the majority of patriots and conservatives who were content to see America gradually collapse, I gravitated toward the militant minority who wanted to confront the liberal regime with force. At the time, it was irrelevant to me which particular issue, taxes, abortion, gun rights, ended up being the spark that ignited the revolution. This is a war between two entirely different worldviews. So, I mean, if you listen to that, I mean, this is what we're hearing. It's that it's not about none of the issues are what's important. Abortion, gay marriage, taxes, the Epstein files, immigration, whatever it is, they are simply the people who think like this are simply using those issues to drive us apart because what is important is the war. And when you think about it, we are not at war. We are not at war. The only way we're at war is if people like this succeed in making that happen. And I'm not ready to concede that. But when you start to see it like that, where none of the issues really are even important to these people, it's just turning us against each other. I think that, really, sort of shows where we are. And that's all that to say, when you start hearing congressmen say the same things that Eric Rudolph was saying, that's why it's relevant today. And when you start hearing, Stephen Miller say things that sound exactly like Eric Rudolph, I mean, it's a reason to be really, really concerned. And for me, it was like in 1998, nobody was talking like that. Everybody on both sides of the aisle agreed this was crazy talk.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, it's insane. And now, for whatever reason, that idea, and that's why we did this podcast, this idea that the rise of the Christian right, the white nationalist, that's what it's about, and it's been sort of normalized and accepted in ways that would have horrified people on all sides of the aisle 25 years ago.
Yeah.
It made me feel really naive, honestly,
Mm-hmm.
because we'd go up into North Carolina, and then in 1998, the search lasted for 5 years. It was the largest manhunt in American history at the time. And people were selling T-shirts and signs that said "Run Rudolph, Run" and things like that. And I always thought that they were just a little, extremist fringe groups. I had no idea how deep that sort of sentiment ran. And that to me it's like I'm from Alabama, and it was always, when I look at the rest of the world, we're always last in, health and education and all these things, and first in, white supremacy and all that. And it was always comforting in a way to think, well, that's just us, right? That's just us. But now what you see is wide swaths of America that used to have these deep-seated feelings in some way.
Thank you guys for tuning into part 2 of this series.
If you haven't listened to part 1, make sure to check it out. We want to thank Mr. Archibald and Mrs. Andrews for their great time and great conversation. And if you liked these episodes, make sure to check out American Shrapnel.
We'll see you guys next time on Muse Talks.